the nature of your emergency?
Good morning, police, fire, military, and families, and to everybody who is listening in on the Tactical Living podcast. I'm really excited for today's guest because working as a coach, one of the biggest complaints that I get is not necessarily the traumatic calls that first responders go on to, but almost always the angst and the difficulty that comes home is because of poor leadership. And it makes me very proud to introduce you to today's guest, Mr. Brent Colbert, because he is actually doing something in order to be able to make a change with that. So Brent, welcome onto our show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As a resident of the great state of Oklahoma, I can sympathize with it being windy because it's like that 95% of the time here.
Okay.
But I do appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So you are a veteran officer, you're a leadership coach, but you're also the host of the First Responder Playbook podcast, which I recommend that everybody go and check out. And, I had an opportunity to sit down and listen to a lot of the content that you have been going all in with your heart is very evident. And something that I didn't really hear you talk a lot about is actually the work that you're doing now. So I'm hoping that I can kind of pick your brain and we can maybe give some value to everybody who's listening, whether they work in law enforcement or not, because I think everybody has worked under a shitty boss before. So a lot of what you've learned and you've decided to kind of pivot into, I think would be very helpful to a lot of people. So before we do that, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. I've been a police officer for 10 years. I've worked everywhere from a 8-man agency to an agency of up to about 150 people. I've been a supervisor. I've done media relations. I left in COVID because I got burnt out with everything going on in the world and working just outside of Tulsa. Man, I was just tired of law enforcement. I was working on overnights. It became a drag to go to work. Probably the world's worst time to take a insurance agency fully commissioned job was during the middle of a pandemic. Went terrible, and I realized, you know what? I actually enjoy being a cop. But through life's failures, I realized that you can actually kind of rise like a phoenix. And I'll never forget, I saw a buddy say, "Hey, I'm getting my master's degree." And I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do that. And so I did it, knocked it out. And then when I got done, I said, I don't have kids yet. I don't have a wife yet. Let's get my doctorate. And got like 8 months left in that with an emphasis in coaching. And I realized that coaching can be very effective in helping officers in what they do every day, whether it's life coaching, career coaching, leadership coaching, because we see a lot of bad things. We deal with a lot of stress, and 95% of the time we don't have anybody that we can talk to.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And I always forget this, you guys, but of course we're doing a giveaway. I found a really cool phone docking station, but it has a firearm rack on it as well. So whoever comments the most in the next 24 hours, I will send that to you. I think it comes in different colors. I'll let you know when you win. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And if you win last time, you can't win this time, but you can win next time. And check out the First Responder. Yeah, thank you for putting that in the comments. So a couple of things here. If we can backtrack to where you said that you got super burned out because of COVID, what was that burnout, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so what's funny is I was a supervisor at the time, but I was there wasn't any formal training they gave me, and so I really wasn't doing anything different than what I had been doing. I was being a cop with a title, and I wasn't fulfilled, and if you think about it, most people are driven by what fulfills them, not necessarily just their job itself. And so I was applying to a bunch of different agencies, like bigger agencies, specialty units with like the state. And for whatever reason, I wasn't getting a call back. And I'll never forget, I saw an insurance agent and I went and did an interview with them. And they were like, "Man, you're going to be so rich. You're going to make all this money." And with everything going on in the world, I just jumped on it. And it was a terrible decision. I enjoyed the insurance agency part, but they put me in the worst part of Tulsa to sell insurance. There was more people that didn't have insurance than did. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things that I really wish I would have had a career coach at the time to kind of talk me through on like where I truly want to get to. But I didn't. And our agency culture was so cutthroat that there really wasn't anybody inside the agency that I could just talk about my frustrations. And so I took the first thing that was just like, hey, look, shiny new toy. And I failed. But that's what has drove me to get to where I'm at today, because there's so many agencies that don't have that support system, either formally through the agency or informally. Um, and guys leave the profession or go to different agencies because they're not fulfilled in their current role, and they're shoehorned to stay there for, X amount of years because, hey, like, man, we don't want you to go to day shift, or hey, we don't want you to go to, weekends off. Guys will leave. Like, they're not tied to an agency for 25 years anymore. And we really have to change that mindset at an agency level of, we know everything. This is best. When in reality, we're managing a team of, anywhere from 50 to 100 people. Um, and you have to manage those personalities and, their career ambitions. And so we've really got to do a better job of that.
Yeah, and you're so right. The two things that stand out to me with your 10 years in your career is that, we had COVID, but then we also had George Floyd. And that's when I had a lot of officers coming to me and like kind of asking for direction on what do we do? And you're absolutely right. We need that implementation, because that's a part of the wholesomeness of the officer wellness, kind of in general. Something I missed in your story is, what was that transition like then going back into law enforcement?
Very simple, actually. In Oklahoma in 2020, there was a Supreme Court ruling called McGirt versus the state of Oklahoma. And it basically stated that tribal reservations were never officially de-established under the five civilized tribes. And so basically from Oklahoma City eastward, it's pretty much tribal reservations now. And so tribal agencies have grown from 15 to 20 officers to probably most of them are 150 plus now. And so they have their own court system. They have everything that your sheriff's office or local police department has. The agency that I was with had 7 canines. They had a drone team. They had 15 investigators. And so they were hiring everybody. And I loved my time working for the tribe. They were great. They took care of us beyond any stretch of imagination. I mean, they actually cared about, off time. It was the wildest thing after being in law enforcement for almost a decade of finally having an agency that actually cared about us. So it was actually great to get back in. But I do want to touch on something you had talked about, and I, to be honest with you, it's been so long, I've kind of blocked it out in typical cop fashion. But you touched on George Floyd. Ferguson had just happened when I got first certified. In Oklahoma, you can have up to 6 months of working before you get certified. And so I was going through a college to get certified. And so I was already working part-time. But my first day certified was like, I would say, weeks of Ferguson. And I'll never forget my first night being certified officer. The agency I worked at usually had 2 people out, but we had 4 out that night. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be proactive. The first car I stopped turned into pursuit, and the guy chased down to a dead end. And I'll never forget. Thankfully, I got out of the car very quickly because we went to a dead end. He didn't know where he was going, and he threw it in reverse and went up over my push bumper and up my windshield to my light bar, and literally ran my car over, and then gunned it forward or got stuck. And he kept trying to reverse it and hit me again. And the only reason I never didn't pull the trigger is because my partner ran to the passenger side and I could see his face in front of me. And I'm thankful for the way things work out. And that's why I always encourage officers to take that extra second to take that breath and before you make a decision. Because he was a 14-year-old African American male runaway from Arizona that had stolen a car in Tulsa. Well, it gets better. He had his 13-year-old girlfriend in the car with him, and his 3-year-old brother sitting in between them. And that was my first day being truly certified. I hadn't even qualified with the agency yet. And my career could have went so much differently on my first day. And so I encourage officers to like slow down and process these things, take a couple deep breaths, find somebody to talk about because they never talked about it again, like at all. Like we handled the call and then moved on and never talked about it again. And, in typical cop fashion, I'm sure I compartmentalized it somewhere and pushed it off in the back and just never thought about it again until, I got to a breaking point. I'll never forget about 6 years into my career, I'm sitting at home playing Xbox and, I'm a typical cop. Nothing's going to hurt me. Nothing's going to bother me. And I'm literally playing Xbox and I just start feeling this like tingling sensation all over. I literally thought I was having a heart attack at 31. And I called my mom, like, hey, I need to go to the ER. Like, I'm having a heart attack. And she's like, will you quit being silly? I'm like, no, I'm being dead serious. And she took me to the ER, and turns out I had a panic attack. Um, but, I got to thinking about that because I was very embarrassed over that. I'm a cop. I can't have a panic attack. But I got to thinking, as very good at that I am about talking through things in my head and, replaying these events, what I could have done better, what went wrong. I never had any sort of formal, like debriefs or like any sort of like counseling through the agency or anything through all of these critical incidents I had been in. And it just built up and got to a point that even somebody that wasn't out there doing crazy stuff, outside of work, I had a panic attack playing Xbox. It could happen to you. It could happen to me. And we really have to do a better job of getting officers help before they get to that tipping point because anxiety, panic attacks, stress, that can all derail a career so quickly.
Yeah, and to have that happen so early on in your career for a lot of officers, that's literally like a make it or break it. Like I'm going to stick with this, or I'm gonna throw in the towel. And so I like that you shared that because while it sucks that you had to go through that, it's really cool to see what you're doing now and kind of how you're giving back. These comments are going crazy about donuts right now, so let's check this out, Brent. So it looks like Eric Reynolds. Oh, thanks for reminding me of that, Eric, because I wanted to make sure that we talk about that training program that you have going on right now, Brent. But did they have donuts and coffee? That's mandatory. Powerful story. Yeah, so everybody can kind of relate to this. It was a solid time. It was wild to be in the county with the 3 tribal area lines in it. Yeah, so definitely he can relate to that as well. So I'm wondering then, because I know that, everybody has that one incredibly poor leader that they learned the most from because they don't want to be like them. So what's that story for you?
Yeah, I always call him Sergeant Redface because I'll never forget that everybody at the agency loved him. But my first year there, he was out hurt and he got put on my shift coming back. And I'm very much, if you can't tell, I'm a very laid back person. I'm not somebody gets worked up. And Tulsa had gotten a pursuit coming into our city that night. And as we're getting close to where they were at, it was on the interstate. And so there was concrete barriers in between. So you couldn't just like turn around. And as we were pulling up, within a mile or so, their dispatch said, hey, we can't get a hold of them. Will you guys go check on them? Well, at the time, the interstate coming the direction they were was under construction. So we would have had to went like 3 miles down and come back through one lane of construction just to get to them. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I can see their cars at the off ramp. So I get off and there's no cars coming. I go up the off ramp with all my lights on because, hey, they're like 300 yards up there. Well, unbeknownst to me, I didn't see there was a Tulsa police officer blacked out in the Arby's down there, just not answering his radio when they're checking on him. So I probably wouldn't have done it then. But he calls me out over the radio, which I laugh at now. But I get back down to where he's at, my supervisor's at, and my friend that was a county deputy. And I'll never forget, he starts dressing me down in front of, these other agencies. And he asked me a question, and he says, why did you do what you did? Well, you asked me a question, so I'm going to answer it. And so I told him, I was like, hey, like I would have to go, 3 miles down, come back through construction. When they're 300 yards up there, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no cars coming off the off ramp. Like, had my lights on. I was on the shoulder that was wide enough for a car. And he said, "Don't effing ever talk back to me again, or I will write you up." And just started like reading me the riot act with a ton of cuss words filled in there. And from that moment forward, I realized that he lost every ounce of credibility that he would ever have. And moving forward, listen, all the listeners out there, I'll admit I poked the bear quite a bit, but every time he would mess something up, I would poke the bear because he lost credibility with me. And then that's actually not my normal personality, but we were such oil and water that he treated me like, dirt. And I finally got to a breaking point. I was like, dude, you're not going to treat me like this anymore without me just taking it. My best friend actually worked with him some on day shift, and we joked that, we both catch a baby falling out of a tree, and he'd get a commendation, and I'd get rode up. And it was just so bad that when I got promoted to corporal, he pulled me in the office and he says, "Well, I don't think you're ready." And I said, "Well, I don't think you're ready to be captain either, but here we are." And I truly believe that's what pushed me over the edge in burnout, was because I had to deal with that every day. And the higher administration allowed that to happen. And they knew about it. It was nothing secret. But you look back on it now as somebody that's, training in leadership, if your higher administration knows that your middle leadership is doing that, that's only killing agency morale. Why would they allow that to happen? And I would say that probably half the agency from that time is no longer there. And they had very good pay, they had good benefits, they had good equipment. We could be as proactive as we want. It was kind of a cop's dream. Like, it was actually a good place to work. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, but I do have just bad things to say about that bad leader because he was terrible. But for whatever reason, from day one, I was on his list of, I'm going to ride his butt daily. And like, it didn't matter. Like I said, I could make the biggest arrest and, get 6 stolen cars in a night, and he wouldn't even tell me good job. And so, like, what do you think that does to the morale of a young officer? It just tanks it. And, if you're a high producer at the agency and you're doing that to them, like, do you think the rest of them are going to rise to the occasion and want to go out there and work and be proactive and catch criminals? No, they're going to want to go hide in the shadows, not do their job, and just take their calls and go home.
Yeah. And giving you a perspective from the other side of it, like the wife side of it, I feel incredibly uncomfortable if my husband is working under, because rank doesn't make leader, right? But a leader who has created that type of atmosphere, because if you're going to treat them like that when the stakes aren't high, what's going to happen when they are? And I'm wondering then because that's just one of your stories and the experience that you've had with poor leadership, which unfortunately, I think that it is a virus that kind of spreads throughout most agencies, especially across our nation, because of the lack of leadership skills and training. And in particular, focusing on that in the academy, because it should already be like molded into you as a baby police officer. So what is it now that you, looking back, are wanting to implement and then to create in order to be able to kind of develop a little bit of change?
Yeah, for sure. So I really think that we have to train our supervisors to realize that the old mindset of this is the way we have always done things is not correct. You have to manage like, if you're a corporal or sergeant, and let's just say you've got 5 to 7 people underneath you, you have to realize that you're not just managing 7 people with just the same exact personalities, their home life, their career ambitions, their personalities. You have to manage each person individually and say, okay, how do we mesh all these people together and make a team? If you go get a team of 7 door kickers, where's the people to take the calls at? Where's the people to do the community events, stuff like that? And so as a supervisor, you have to take all these different personalities, these different career ambitions, and mesh them together. And really, it's kind of like baking a cake, because if you don't put the right ingredients in, you're not going to be successful. And so I think we really have to start training our leadership from middle management up to building teams, instead of just sticking somebody, that's been, only there 6 months and just sticking them on a shift and saying, "Oh, good luck, sink or swim." But then you get those people that stay on a shift for 20 years. Hey, at some point, it's probably a good time for you to switch shifts up, because it gets you out of your bad habits. It gets you out of like a bad shift if you're stuck on a bad shift. We have to realize these things need to be switched around and start doing a better job of that.
Yeah, you're right. I know that in my husband's department, he has like career graveyard guys. And so yeah, it's interesting that you said that. Oklahoma has always been 20 years behind in living. Debriefing. Yeah, I know you guys are great with debriefing, baby. I love you too, Jason. And I forgot to tell you when we were talking yesterday that I love what you're doing with kind of leadership for dads. That is amazing. So keep going with that. Poor leadership, common problem. I don't know how to say whatever that word and then buckle is, Ed. You could explain that to me later. So now you're getting your doctorate and you kind of have this plan in mind of what comes next. So what is it that you're developing right now to be able to get back to officers?
Yeah, so actually, my current adventure, I guess if you want to call it that, is, what's the main thing you think of in a law enforcement world about training? Is that, man, we can't send you for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. Funds are tight. Common things that you hear for agencies. And so I'm actually working on a group coaching leadership training right now that is going to start next week. But I'm going to start doing them on a regular basis, and I price it to where $150 for 15 hours of continuing education. But we're going to do it uniquely in that we're going to meet over Zoom for 90 minutes each week for 10 weeks. And so that way that your agency doesn't have to lose you for, 2, 3, 4 days at a time, and it's affordable. But I want people from different agencies to talk about these issues of leadership, of what didn't work, what we can do better, and go through these scenarios and figure out plans that, hey, like if I have to face this situation moving forward, let's attack it a better way. And so I'm just trying new avenues of like getting coaching ideas out there, training ideas out there, because I've been in those patrol situations. And, man, agencies, they get so caught up in either seniority or funding or, lack of scheduling that they try to deny your training for whatever reason. 90 minutes, you can make that work. And I even set it up to where, hey, if you missed the video, like watch the recording and just let me know, because I want that guy that works overnights to be like, hey, this is accessible to me. Hey, that person that's got the crappy days off, hey, this is accessible to me. Because every officer, point blank period, is a leader, and they need to be making correct, efficient, and quick decisions so that they and the citizens go home safe every night. And that's my goal.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I think that that's going to do amazing. I know we have more comments in here, you guys, so I'll make sure that I get to them once we pop off of here. So Brent, how can somebody get a hold of you, get a hold of that training, and what else do you want them to know about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're doing with your podcast. My podcast is new. It's probably not near as efficient or as good, but
it is very good.
I do pour my heart into it. So if anybody would like to check it out, the First Responder Playbook, it's on YouTube, any streaming platform. I've got the First Responder Playbook Facebook page, or just email me, bcolbert1629@gmail.com. I respond to all my emails because I really truly try to help people as best I can, because I've been in those shoes and I want to make this profession better for everybody. If you guys decide, hey, you want to take my group coaching program, I'll get you some information on it. And I'll even help you get accredited in whatever state you're in, because I actually care. Like, I'm not here just to do the training and say, see you later. Like, guys, we're all the same jobs, different uniforms, different states. Let's get after it.
That's awesome. You guys, thank you so much for engaging. And if you have any more questions for Brent, drop them down below. And Brent, hang tight, because I have a couple of things that I still want to talk to you about. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And guys, tell Ashley to keep up the good fight.
Oh, thanks.